Admiral Kim Dae-ho stood at the bridge window of the Earthship Unity, watching the massive space station grow larger as they approached. Nexus Prime was unlike anything humanity had ever built. The station stretched for hundreds of kilometers. In all directions, its surface covered in gleaming towers that twisted like DNA helixes into space. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at various ports, their designs so alien that Kim could barely understand how they stayed in the air. First contact protocol is in effect, announced Dr. Park Soo-jin from her station. The xenobiologist had spent her entire career dreaming of this moment. Her hands trembled slightly as she reviewed her notes about the 12 different species they were about to meet. All translation systems are working perfectly. The universal language database they sent us seems complete. Diplomat Lee Tae-min adjusted his formal Earth Alliance uniform one final time. He had negotiated peace between warring nations on Earth, but this was different. Today he would speak for all of humanity to beings from the stars. Remember, we're here as equals. Earth has earned its place among the civilized worlds. Colonel Choi Hae-rim checked her weapons one last time, though they were ceremonial only. The Galactic Council had been very clear that no actual weapons were allowed during first contact meetings. Still, her military training made her nervous. Something about this whole situation felt wrong, though she couldn't explain why. The docking process took 2 hours. The station's traffic control systems guided their ship through a complex series of energy barriers and scanning devices. Kim watched as alien ships of incredible complexity moved around them with practiced ease. Some ships seemed to be made of living crystal, others appeared to be pure energy contained in force fields. One massive vessel looked like it was built from folded space itself. Docking complete, reported Engineer Han Jae-won from the engine room. Their power systems are incredible, Admiral. The energy readings I'm getting from this station could power Earth's entire electrical grid for 1,000 years. Kim nodded grimly. The technology gap between Earth and the Galactic Council was enormous, but humanity had always been resourceful. They had earned their place here through decades of hard work, scientific advancement, and peaceful exploration of their local star systems. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and the Earth delegation stepped onto Nexus Prime for the first time. The corridor beyond was vast, its ceiling disappearing into misty heights above. The walls seemed to be made of some kind of living metal that shifted and flowed like water, but felt solid to the touch. Soft, musical tones echoed from hidden speakers, creating an atmosphere that was both beautiful and intimidating. Their guide appeared without warning, materializing from thin air in front of them. The being stood 3 meters tall with 6 arms and skin that looked like polished silver. Its face had no mouth, but when it spoke, the words appeared directly in their minds. I am Guide Nexus 7. The Council of 12 awaits your species. In the Grand Chamber. Follow. They walked for what felt like hours through corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy. Dr. Park Soo-jin tried to catalog the different species they passed, but there were too many. Floating jellyfish-like creatures drifted through the air alongside insectoid beings that scuttled on multiple legs. Energy beings flickered in and out of existence while rock-like creatures moved with surprising grace. Most of the aliens they passed ignored the human delegation completely. Some stopped to stare, their expressions unreadable. A few made sounds that their translation systems couldn't interpret, but the tone seemed hostile. They don't look very welcoming, whispered Colonel Choi. Give them time, replied Lee Tae-min. First contact is always awkward. They probably don't know what to make of us yet. The Grand Chamber was a sphere the size of a small city, its walls made of transparent crystal that showed the stars beyond. 12 massive thrones floated in the center of the space, each designed for a different alien physiology. The Council of 12 had gathered to judge humanity's worthiness to join galactic civilization. Chancellor Veltar spoke first, his voice booming through the chamber without any technological amplification. The Zephyrian leader looked like a giant butterfly made of liquid metal, his 4 wings constantly shifting between different colors. Species designation, human. Planet of origin, Earth, Sol system. You have requested membership in the Galactic Council of Civilized Worlds. That's correct, honored Chancellor, replied Lee Tae-min, stepping forward with a formal bow. Humanity has achieved faster-than-light travel, established peaceful contact protocols, and demonstrated our commitment to scientific advancement and exploration. We believe we're ready to join the galactic community. Empress Zilara leaned forward on her throne of living crystal. Her species looked like geometric shapes made of colored glass, but her voice was surprisingly warm. Tell us, humans, what can your species offer to galactic civilization? What makes you worthy of membership among the stars? Dr. Park Soo-jin activated a holographic display showing Earth's achievements. We offer scientific curiosity, cultural diversity, and technological innovation. In just 200 years, we've gone from horse-drawn carriages to starships. Our music, art, and literature represent thousands of different cultures working together. We've overcome war, poverty, and environmental destruction through cooperation. The council members exchanged glances. Several made sounds that the translation systems couldn't handle. Others remained completely silent, their alien body language impossible to read. Chancellor Veltar spread his wings wide. We have observed your species for 700 of your years, humans. We have watched your wars, your violence, your destruction of your own world. We have seen how you treat those who are different from you. But we've changed, protested Lee Taemin. We've learned from our mistakes. Earth is united now. We've ended war, solved our environmental problems, and learned to work together despite our differences. Have you? Asked Councilmember Teclone, a being that looked like a tree made of metal and electricity. Your history shows consistent patterns of violence, aggression, and territorial expansion. Even now, your ships carry weapons. Your soldiers train for war. Colonel Choi stepped forward. We prepare for defense only. Every species needs to protect itself. Even here, I see that your station has defensive systems. The difference, said Empress Zilara coldly, is that we use our defenses responsibly. We do not conquer, we do not expand aggressively, and we do not force our will upon others. Engineer Han Jae-won had been quietly scanning the station's systems during the meeting. What he discovered made his blood run cold. He activated a private communication channel to Admiral Kim. Sir, you need to see this. They've been blocking our expansion for centuries. Every time one of our deep space probes got close to another star system, it mysteriously malfunctioned. They've been watching us and keeping us isolated. Kim's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. Keep scanning, he whispered back. The debate continued for hours. The humans presented their case with passion and logic, showing evidence of their species' growth and potential. They spoke of their dreams of exploring the stars, of learning from other civilizations, and of contributing to galactic peace. But it was clear that the decision had been made long before they arrived. Chancellor. Veltar finally called for silence. The Council of 12 has reached a unanimous decision. The species known as humanity is deemed unfit for membership in civilized galactic society. Your aggressive nature, your history of violence, and your unpredictable behavior make you a threat to the peace we have maintained for 10,000 years. The humans stood in shocked silence. Dr. Park Soo-jin felt tears forming in her eyes. Lee Tae-min's diplomatic training abandoned him completely. Colonel Choi's hand instinctively moved toward her weapon before she stopped herself. Furthermore, continued the Chancellor, humanity will be confined to the Kepler sector in the Outer Rim. Any human ship attempting to leave this designated area will be destroyed without warning. This quarantine will remain in effect until your species learns to control its violent impulses. This is wrong, said Admiral Kim, finally speaking. You're condemning an entire species based on our past, not our potential. Empress Zilara's crystalline form shifted to a darker color. Your potential is exactly what we fear, Admiral. We have seen what humans become when given power and freedom. The galaxy is safer with your species contained. As the Earth delegation was escorted back to their ship under heavy guard, Engineer Han completed his scans. What he discovered was worse than imprisonment. The Galactic Council hadn't just isolated humanity, they had been actively suppressing human development for centuries, keeping them weak and contained while pretending the galaxy was empty. Dr. Park Soo-jin looked back at the retreating station. As their ship was forced toward the Outer Rim by alien escort vessels. They didn't reject us because we're primitive, she said quietly. They rejected us because they're afraid of what we'll become. Admiral Kim nodded grimly as the stars of the Kepler sector appeared on their screens. The region looked empty and lifeless, filled with dead worlds and cosmic debris. But Kim had learned something important during their brief time among the stars. Fear was a weapon that cut both ways, and humanity hay. 5 years had passed since the exile, and the Kepler sector barely looked like the same place. What had once been empty space filled with dead rocks and cosmic debris now buzzed with activity. Human ships moved between dozens of worlds, their blue engines cutting bright lines through the darkness. Space stations orbited former dead planets, their solar panels catching the light of distant stars. General Yu Min-ho stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiance, watching construction. Crews work on the newest defensive platform. His hair had gone gray during the exile, but his eyes burned with determination. The humans had learned quickly that the outer rim was not as empty as the Galactic Council had claimed. Dangerous things lived in the dark spaces between stars, and some of them were hungry. "Report from Kepler 7, announced his aide, Lieutenant Park. "The mining operation has found more of those strange metal deposits, the ones that seem to repair themselves." Yu nodded. The self-healing metals were just one of many discoveries humanity had made in their prison. The Galactic Council had thrown them into what they thought was a wasteland, but it was actually a treasure vault of abandoned technology and rare resources. "Send a science team immediately. Dr. Nam will want to study those samples." Dr. Nam So-Young had become humanity's most important person over the past 5 years. Her laboratory on New Sol Station was where miracles happened daily. She had reverse-engineered alien technology found on dead worlds, combined it with human engineering, and created things that neither species could have built alone. "The new power cores are ready for testing," she announced to her team of engineers and scientists. The laboratory was a maze of equipment that hummed and sparked with energy. Holographic displays showed complex equations that would have been impossible to solve just 10 years ago. "If my calculations are correct, these should provide 10 times more power than our old fusion reactors." Her assistant, Dr. Kim Young-soo, looked nervous. "Are you sure it's safe? The energy readings are unlike anything we've seen." "Nothing we do here is completely safe," replied Nam with a smile. "But staying weak and trapped isn't safe either. The Council expects us to stay primitive and helpless. Let's prove them wrong." On the other side of the sector, Captain Jung Woo-jin was making an even more important discovery. His exploration ship Pioneer had detected strange signals coming from the Kepler-12 system. When they investigated, they found something that changed everything. They were not alone in their exile. The first aliens they encountered looked like giant insects, but they walked on 2 legs and used tools. Their ships were organic, grown rather than built, with hulls that looked like beetle shells. When Jung's team made contact, they expected hostility. Instead, they found beings who understood exactly what humanity was going through. Queen Ziktal of the Kithara clicked her mandibles in what Jung had learned was their equivalent of laughter. "The Council fears species that think differently," she said through the translation device they had built together. "We were exiled 300 years ago for refusing to give up our hive mind culture. They said we were too alien to be civilized." Jung shook his head in amazement. "They told us we were too violent and unpredictable." "Different excuses, same fear," replied the Queen. "They only accept species that think like they do." The meeting between humans and Kithara took place on a neutral asteroid that had been hollowed out and turned into a meeting station. The Kithara had brought gifts, technologies for growing food in space, and medicines that could heal almost any injury. The humans offered their own innovations, better engines, stronger materials, and weapons designed to protect rather than conquer. But the real surprise came when a third group arrived at the meeting. The Vorthon were even stranger than the Kithara. They looked like living rocks with crystal growths, but they moved with surprising grace. Node Quindar, their speaker, communicated through light patterns that created beautiful displays across its crystalline surface. "We were exiled for asking too many questions," Node Quindar explained. "The Council prefers species that accept their authority without question. We wanted to know why they made certain decisions, why some worlds were forbidden to explore, why certain technologies were banned. They decided we were troublemakers." Captain Young realized they had stumbled onto something huge. How many other species has the Council exiled? Dozens, replied Queen Ziktal. Maybe hundreds over the centuries. Anyone who doesn't fit their narrow definition of civilization gets thrown out here to die. But we're not dying, said Jung with growing excitement. We're thriving. That night, Jung sent a message back to Admiral Kim Dae-ho and General Yu Min-ho. The message was simple but revolutionary. We need to talk. All of us. Together. 2. Months later, the first Interspecies Council meeting was held on New Sol Station. Representatives from humanity, the Cathara, and the Vorthan gathered in what had once been a storage bay. Dr. Nam So-young had converted it into a meeting room that could accommodate the very different needs of 3 alien species. Admiral Kim, now promoted to sector commander, addressed the mixed group. The Galactic Council made a mistake when they exiled us. They thought we would fight each other, weaken each other, and eventually destroy ourselves. Instead, we're doing something they never expected. Working together, added Queen Ziktal, her compound eyes gleaming with intelligence. More than that, said Noda Quindar, its crystal formations pulsing with colored light. We're becoming something new, something they can't control or understand. Inventor Bei Yunji stepped forward with a holographic display showing her latest creation. I've been working with Cathara bioengineers and Vorthan crystal growers. We've developed something completely new, a faster-than-light drive that doesn't use any Galactic Council technology. The display showed an engine design that looked like art as much as engineering. Organic curves from Cathara biotechnology blended with crystalline matrices from Vorthan science, all held together by human metals and electronics. How fast? Asked General Yu. 3 times faster than anything the Council uses, replied Bei proudly. And it's completely silent. Their sensors won't even know we're there. Admiral Oh Kyung-soo, who commanded the growing fleet of human warships, leaned forward with interest. You mean we could travel anywhere in the galaxy without them knowing? Better. Than that? Said Dr. Nam So-young, who had been working on her own projects. I've been studying the communication methods the Cathara use with their hive mind. Combined with Vorthan crystal technology, we could create an instant communication network across the entire galaxy. No delays, no interference, no way for the Council to block or monitor our messages. Node. Quindar's light patterns shifted to what the humans had learned indicated extreme excitement. Real-time coordination across interstellar distances. No military force in galactic history has ever had such an advantage. The meeting continued for 3 days. By the end, they had created something that had never existed before. A true alliance between completely different species, each contributing their unique strengths to a common cause. They called it the Outer Rim Coalition. The Coalition's first major project was to find and contact other exiled species. Captain Jung Woo Jin led exploration fleets that spread out across the Outer Rim, following ancient signals and forgotten star charts. What they found amazed even the optimistic humans. There were dozens of exiled species scattered across the region. The aquatic Merhai had been banished for refusing to give up their ocean worlds to Council mining operations. The energy beings called the Lux were exiled for being too different. They didn't have physical bodies, and the Council couldn't figure out how to control them. The plant-like Verdani were cast out for insisting that all life was sacred, including species the Council considered pests. Each species had their own story, but the pattern was always the same. They had something the Council feared: independence, different ideas, unique abilities, or simply the courage to ask difficult questions. But now they had something else: each other. Admiral Kim stood in the command center of New Sol Station, looking at a holographic map of the Outer Rim that was covered in friendly signals. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species moved freely through space that had once been empty. Trade routes connected worlds that had been isolated for centuries. Technologies were being shared that created innovations none of the species could have achieved alone. The Council thinks they punished us, said Dr. Park Soo-jin, who had become the Coalition's chief ambassador. Instead, they gave us the greatest gift possible: each other. Engineer Han Jae-won, who had been quietly working on intelligence projects, approached with a worried expression. I've been monitoring Council communications. They're starting to notice increased activity in the Outer Rim. Some of their patrol ships have reported strange energy readings. Kim nodded grimly. How long before they investigate? Maybe 2 years. Maybe less. Then we need to be ready, said General Yu, joining the conversation. The coalition is strong, but we're still outnumbered. We need to be smarter, not just braver. Dr. Nam So-young looked up from her research station. I might have something that could help. I've been analyzing the ruins on Kepler-19. The civilization that built them was incredibly advanced, maybe even more than the current council. If we could understand their technology... Doten years after the exile, Merchant Captain Shin Hai-wan guided her cargo ship through the shadow of a gas giant, invisible to the Galactic Council patrol that passed just 50 kilometers away. Her ship Silent Trader was one of hundreds that now moved freely through Council space, carrying more than just goods between worlds. They carried hope. Altair Mining Station ahead, announced her navigator, a young Cathara named Click7th. The insectoid being's compound eyes could see energy patterns that human eyes missed. I count 12 Council guard ships, standard patrol formation. Shin nodded calmly. The Altair system was heavily guarded because it contained some of the richest mining worlds in the galaxy. It also contained something the Council wanted to keep hidden: millions of slaves working in conditions that would kill most beings within months. Begin stealth approach, she ordered. Remember, we're just another Council supply ship bringing fresh equipment to the mines. The stealth technology that made this possible came from Dr. Nam So-young's laboratories back in the Outer Rim. It didn't just make ships invisible to sensors, it made them look like something else entirely. To the Council guards, the Silent Trader appeared to be exactly what Shin claimed. But hidden in the cargo hold were things that would change everything for the slaves below. On the third moon of Altair 7, the mining tunnels stretched deep into rock that glowed with valuable crystals. The workers who dug these tunnels were mostly Rothak, a species of small, furry beings with excellent digging skills. The Council had conquered their world decades ago and transported the entire population. To serve as miners, Elder Rothak Grix-Tal worked with tools that cut his hands and breathed air that burned his lungs. Like all his people, he had given up hope of ever seeing his home world again. The Council guards made sure the miners knew that escape was impossible and rebellion meant death. That was before the packages started appearing, hidden among regular supply deliveries. Small containers began showing up with messages written in perfect Rothak language. The first message was simple: "You are not forgotten. Help is coming. Be ready." The packages contained more than messages. They held medicine that healed the damage from toxic mining dust, food that actually provided proper nutrition, and most importantly, communication devices that let the miners talk to each other across the entire mining operation. Elder Grix-Tal held one of the small devices in his worn paws, hardly believing what he heard through it. "This is Captain Young Woo Jin of the Outer Rim Coalition," said the voice. "We know what the Council has done to your people. We're here to take you home." Similar scenes played out across dozens of worlds. The Coalition's intelligence network, led by Captain Ryu Sung-ho and his sister intelligence chief Ryu Mi-young, had spent years mapping the Council's hidden operations. What they found was a galaxy built on slavery and oppression that the Council's propaganda carefully concealed. The aquatic Merhai were the first to be liberated. Their ocean world of Aquatica Prime had been turned into a water processing plant, with the native population forced to work as living filters to clean industrial waste. Captain Ryu led a daring raid that freed over 2 million Merhai in a single night operation. "The water is ours again," sang Tide Speaker Akuvel, as coalition ships helped her people reclaim their world. The Merhai communication method sounded like music to human ears. "The poison makers have fled, and the seas run clean once more." But the most important discovery came when Dr. Song Jin-ae's research team explored the ruins on Kepler-19. The ancient world had been dead for millions of years, but the structures buried beneath its surface told an incredible story. "These aren't just ruins," Dr. Song announced during a Coalition Council meeting. "This was the capital world of the Forerunners, the species that ruled the galaxy before the current council existed." The holographic display showed massive cities that had been built to accommodate hundreds of different species. The architecture was unlike anything in the current galaxy. designed for cooperation rather than control, with technology that enhanced life rather than restricting it. "Look at these power systems," said Dr. Nam So-young, studying the data. "They generate energy from space itself. No fuel needed, no pollution, no waste. And these transportation networks, they could move ships instantly between any 2 points in the galaxy." "What happened to them?" asked Admiral Kim Dae-ho. Dr. Song's expression grew serious. "From what I can tell, they didn't die out naturally. The evidence suggests they were destroyed by the ancestors of the current Council species. The Forerunners believed in freedom and cooperation. The Council believed in order and control. They committed genocide to take power," said Queen Ziktal, her mandibles clicking with anger. "And they've been covering it up ever since," added Node Quindar, its crystal formations pulsing red with rage. The discovery of Forerunner technology changed everything for the Coalition. Dr. Song's team worked day and night to understand systems that were millions of years ahead of anything the current galaxy possessed. The breakthrough came when they realized that Forerunner technology was designed to work with multiple species together. No single race could operate it alone. "It requires cooperation," explained Dr. Song. "A human provides creativity. A Kythera provides biological interface. A Vorthan provides crystalline matrix, and so on. The Forerunners built their entire civilization on the idea that different species working together are stronger than any single race." "Just like us," said Admiral Kim with growing excitement. The first test of combined Forerunner Coalition technology was spectacular. A small corvette equipped with the new systems could move faster than anything in the galaxy, generate shields that Council weapons couldn't penetrate, and carry enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. But more importantly, it proved that the Coalition was following the right path. Commander Lim Yu-jin used this technological advantage to plan Operation Silent Thunder, the largest liberation campaign in galactic history. Coalition fleets would simultaneously strike at 50 different Council oppression sites, freeing millions of enslaved beings before the Council could react. The operation began at exactly the same moment across the galaxy, coordinated by the instant communication network the Coalition had built. Captain Young led the assault on the crystal mines of Zerion 4, where energy beings called the Lux had been trapped in force cages for centuries. General Yu commanded the liberation of the agricultural world Verdant, where plant-like beings had been forced to grow food for Council worlds while their own people starved. On Altair 7, Shin Haiwan's merchant ships revealed their true nature. Hidden weapons emerged from cargo holds, and stealth fields dropped to reveal a massive fleet of Coalition warships. "This is Admiral Oh Kyung-soo of the Outer Rim Coalition," his voice broadcast on all frequencies. "By the authority of free species, everywhere, we hereby liberate this world from Council tyranny. All guards will lay down weapons and prepare for prisoner transfer. All slaves are now free citizens of the Coalition." The Council forces were caught completely off guard. Their rigid military tactics, designed for fighting other Council species, proved useless against Coalition forces that fought with the combined strategies of dozens of different species. Human unpredictability combined with Kythera swarm tactics and Vorthan crystalline shields to create something no Council military planner had ever imagined. The liberation of 50 worlds in a single day sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time in millennia, Council authority had been openly challenged and defeated. But the real impact came from what happened next. The freed slaves didn't just go home. They joined the Coalition. Elder Grixtal stood before the Coalition, Council as the official representative of the Rothak people. "For generations we believed the Council when they said resistance was impossible. You have shown us that freedom is always possible when beings stand together." The energy beings called the Lux were even more grateful. Their speaker, a shifting pattern of light named Bright Rising, could barely contain their joy. "We had forgotten what it meant to choose our own path. The Coalition has given us back our souls." Within months, the Coalition had grown from dozens of species to hundreds. Each liberation brought new allies, new technologies, and new hope to the galaxy. Chancellor Veltar of the Galactic Council called an emergency session to address what he called the Outer Rim insurgency. His butterfly-like wings flickered with angry colors as he addressed the 12 Council members. "This cannot be allowed to continue," he declared. If word spreads that the Council can be challenged, our entire civilization will collapse into chaos. The humans are behind this, said Empress Zilara, her crystalline form dark with fury. We should have destroyed them when we had the chance. It's too late for should-haves, replied Council Member Theclon. They're no longer just humans. They've created something new, something we don't understand. Then we destroy it, said Veltar coldly. Whatever it takes. But in the outer rim, Admiral Kim Dae-ho stood before a holographic display showing the galaxy as it really was. Hundreds of worlds flew coalition flags. Thousands of ships carried the symbol of cooperation that had replaced the Council's symbol of dominance. Dr. Park Soo-jin, now aged but still shay. The war began at dawn on New Geneva, a peaceful farming world that had declared independence from the Council just 3 months earlier. Marshal Go Tae-young watched from his command ship as Council battle fleets emerged from hyperspace, their weapons already charging for bombardment. 1,200 ships, reported his tactical officer. They're not here to negotiate. Go had expected this. Chancellor Veltar had made it clear that the Council would destroy any world that dared to leave their control. New Geneva's crime was simple. They had voted to join the coalition and feed their own people instead of shipping all their food to Council core worlds. All coalition forces, this is Marshal Go, he broadcast on the command frequency. Execute Defense Plan Harmony 7. Remember, we're not just fighting for victory, we're fighting for the right to exist. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations. Council forces attacked in their traditional formation, massive battleships supported by smaller cruisers, all moving in perfect geometric patterns that had dominated space warfare for centuries. The coalition response was nothing like anything the Council had ever seen. Captain Kang Min-woo led his fighter squadron through impossible maneuvers, his small ships dancing between Council vessels like leaves in the wind. His fighters weren't just human-built. They used Cathara biological guidance systems that could react faster than any artificial computer, and Vorthon crystal cores that made them nearly invisible to Council sensors. I can see their firing. Patterns before they know them themselves, Kang reported as his fighters tore through a formation of Council destroyers. It's like they're moving in slow motion. On the surface of New Geneva, General An So-ra commanded ground forces that included soldiers from 15 different species. When Council Marines landed expecting to face primitive resistance, they instead found defensive positions that seemed to grow from the ground itself. The Verdani, plant-like beings who understood every living thing on the planet, had convinced the native trees to form natural barriers that Council weapons couldn't penetrate. The Rothak used their digging skills to create tunnel networks that let coalition forces appear anywhere on the battlefield. The energy beings called Lux provided power for weapons that fired beams of pure light. They can't adapt, General An observed as she watched Council forces retreat from their third landing attempt. They're trained to fight enemies that think like them. We're fighting with 15 different styles at once. But the most devastating surprise came from Captain Seo Hee-jin and her experimental warship, Phase Walker. Using Forerunner technology combined with coalition innovations, her ship could phase in and out of normal space, appearing behind enemy lines to strike before vanishing again. Council Admiral Vex Taran watched in horror as half his fleet simply disappeared, destroyed by an enemy that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. "What kind of weapons are they using?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir," replied his sensor officer. "Our computers can't even classify their attack patterns. It's like they're using physics we don't understand." The truth was simpler and more frightening. The coalition wasn't using unknown physics. They were using known physics in ways no single species had ever imagined. Each coalition ship was crewed by multiple species working together, combining their different ways of thinking into something greater than the sum of its parts. The war spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every world that the coalition liberated became another front where Council forces had to fight. Every victory brought new allies who had been waiting for someone to stand up to the Council's 1,000-year rule. The battle for the Centauri system became legendary when Commander Im Dong-min led a task force that included ships from 20 different species in a desperate assault on the Council's regional command center. His flagship was human-built, but his crew included Cathera navigators, Vorthan engineers, Merhai communications specialists, and Lux energy weapon operators. "All ships, prepare for final approach," Im broadcast as they closed in on the heavily defended station. The Council had positioned over 300 ships to protect their command center, along with orbital weapons platforms that could destroy entire fleets. "Sir, the odds are impossible," reported his tactical officer, a young Rothak named Squeak Bright. "The odds were impossible when they exiled us to die in the Outer Rim," Im replied calmly. "The odds were impossible when we decided to free the slaves. The odds were impossible when we challenged the Council itself. Since when do we care about impossible odds?" The assault was chaos from the first moment. Council forces expected a traditional attack with neat formations and predictable tactics. Instead, they faced something that looked more like a swarm of angry insects than a military formation. Coalition ships moved independently but in perfect coordination, each crew following their own species' combat instincts while working toward a common goal. Cathera bioships released clouds of small fighters that moved like living creatures. Vorthan crystal ships created energy barriers that protected the entire fleet while focusing their fire through geometric patterns that multiplied their power. Human ships used unpredictable tactics that confused Council targeting systems. The breakthrough came when Im's ship Unity managed to dock with the Council command station. Fighting their way through corridors filled with automated defenses, Im's mixed-species boarding party reached the command center where they found Chancellor Veltar himself, directing the defense. "Surrender," Im ordered, his weapon trained on the massive butterfly-like alien. "Your forces are beaten." Veltar's wings flickered with colors that showed his rage and disbelief. "This is impossible. You're primitives from the Outer Rim. We have ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. "Your mistake was thinking that ruling meant the same thing as leading," Im replied. "We don't rule anyone. We work together." The capture of Chancellor Veltar sent shockwaves through the remaining Council forces. For the first time in galactic history, the supreme leader of the Council was a prisoner of people he had considered beneath notice. But victory came at a terrible cost. The battle for Centauri had lasted 3 days and cost thousands of lives on both sides. Commander Hong Subin had sacrificed her entire fleet to save the civilian population of New Geneva, ramming her flagship into a Council dreadnought that was targeting evacuation ships. She saved 1 billion people, Admiral Kim reported during the memorial service held after the battle. "Hong Subin understood what we're really fighting for. Not conquest, not revenge, but the right of all beings to live free." The war continued for 2 more years, but the capture of Chancellor Veltar marked the beginning of the end for Council resistance. Without their supreme leader, the 12 Council members began fighting among themselves. Some wanted to negotiate. With the coalition, others demanded total war, and a few began secretly switching sides. Empress Zilara was the first Council member to openly defect. Her crystalline form had changed color from its usual cold blue to a warmer purple when she addressed the Coalition Council. "I have watched the galaxy burn for 3 years," she said, her voice carrying none of its former arrogance. "I have seen Council forces bomb civilians, destroy entire worlds, and commit acts that shame all civilized beings. This is not the civilization I thought I was protecting." "What do you want from us?" asked Admiral Kim, who had learned not to trust former enemies too quickly. "A chance to rebuild," Zilara replied. "The Council system is broken beyond repair, but maybe something better can be built from its ruins." The final battle of the war took place at Nexus Prime itself, the massive space station where humanity had first been rejected 25 years earlier. The Coalition fleet that approached the station was larger than any military force in galactic history. Thousands of ships from hundreds of species, all united under the banner of freedom. But they didn't come as conquerors. "This is Admiral Kim Dae-ho of the Coalition," he broadcast to the station as his fleet took defensive positions around it. "We're not here to destroy Nexus Prime or harm its inhabitants. We're here to offer the same choice we've offered every other world in the galaxy. Join us in building something better or remain trapped in the past." The remaining council members, led by the few who still refused to surrender, prepared for a final desperate battle. They had turned Nexus Prime into a fortress, with weapons that could destroy planets and shields that had never been penetrated. But the Coalition had learned something during the war that the Council never understood. The greatest weapon wasn't technology or superior firepower. It was the simple idea that all beings deserved to be free. The battle for Nexus Prime lasted only 6 hours, not because the Coalition overwhelmed the station's defenses, but because the beings living on the station, the same aliens who had watched humanity's rejection decades earlier, opened the docking bays themselves. "We're tired of living in fear," declared Guide Nexus 7, the same being who had led the human delegation to their first meeting with the Council. "We want to be part of something better." The war was over. The Galactic Council had fallen not through conquest, but through the simple power of beings choosing cooperation over oppression. As Coalition forces secured Nexus Prime, Admiral Kim stood in the same chamber where humanity had been judged and rejected. The 12 thrones still floated. 3 years after the Council's defeat, President Moon Jae-hyun stood at the podium in the rebuilt Assembly Hall on Earth, looking out at representatives from over 300 species. The Great Hall had been redesigned to accommodate every form of life imaginable: aquatic tanks for the Merhai, crystal growth chambers for the Vorthan, atmospheric bubbles for gas-based beings, and even energy containment fields for the Lux. "Today marks the 5th anniversary of the Galactic Union," Moon announced, his voice translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. 5 years ago, we were enemies fighting a war that threatened to tear the galaxy apart. Today, we are partners building something that has never existed before, a civilization based on cooperation instead of control. In the audience, Chancellor Yi Nara nodded approvingly. The former council diplomat had become one of the Union's most effective leaders, using her centuries of experience to help negotiate peace between species that had been enemies for generations. Her talent for finding common ground between very different beings had made her invaluable in the new government. "The transformation hasn't been easy," Moon continued. "Rebuilding a galaxy takes more than good intentions. It requires patience, understanding, and the willingness to forgive old wounds while preventing new ones." The applause that followed came in many forms: traditional clapping from humanoid species, harmonic vibrations from crystalline beings, bioluminescent flashes from the energy creatures, and the clicking sounds that served as approval from the insectoid races. Admiral Shin Dong-wook watched the ceremony from his command ship orbiting Earth. The Union Defense Fleet under his command looked nothing like the old Council forces. Ships from dozens of worlds flew in mixed formations, their crews working together in ways that would have been impossible under the old system. "Report from the Perseus sector," announced his communications officer, a young Kithara named Buzz Swift. "Pirate fleet attempting to raid the trade routes near Altair." Shin nodded calmly. Pirates and raiders had become a problem in some parts of the galaxy, where the transition from council rule to Union democracy had left power gaps. "Dispatch Squadron 7, mixed crew, standard peacekeeping rules, capture if possible, destroy only if necessary." The squadron that responded included human ships with Vorthan shield generators, Kithara bioships with human weapon systems, and completely new designs created by species working together. They moved with the fluid coordination that had made coalition forces so effective during the war. But they weren't going to fight a war. They were going to preserve peace. On the research station orbiting Jupiter, Dr. Jong Mi-kyung led the Forerunner Studies Division in their most ambitious project yet. The ancient technology left behind by the galaxy's first civilization was slowly revealing its secrets, but each discovery brought new questions. "The energy readings are off the scale," reported. Her assistant, Dr. Patel, a human scientist who worked closely with a Vorthan partner named Node Clearthought. "If we're right about this, the Forerunners didn't just travel between stars, they traveled between galaxies." Dr. Jong studied the holographic display showing a massive ring-shaped device they had found buried on an ancient world. Intergalactic travel. That would explain why they disappeared. Maybe they didn't die out. Maybe they just moved on to explore other galaxies. Which means this technology could work again, added Node Clearthought, its crystal formations pulsing with excitement. we could follow in their footsteps. The implications were staggering. If the Union could master intergalactic travel, they could spread their message of cooperation and freedom to other galaxies, other civilizations that might be struggling under their own versions of the old council. But first, they had to finish healing their own galaxy. On New Geneva, the farming world where some of the war's fiercest battles had taken place, former enemies worked side by side in the reconstruction efforts. Veltar, the former council chancellor, supervised a team of mixed-species engineers as they rebuilt a city destroyed during the fighting. His beautiful butterfly wings, once symbols of absolute authority, were now dulled by years of honest labor. The irrigation system needs to account for both oxygen-breathing and methane-breathing workers, he explained to his team. The Merhai can handle the underwater sections but will need breathing apparatus for the rest of us. It was strange to see the former dictator of the galaxy working as a construction supervisor. But that was the Union's way. Instead of executing their former enemies, they offered them chances to help build something better. Not all former council supporters had accepted the offer, but many had discovered that working for the common good was more satisfying than ruling through fear. Chancellor Veltar called out a young human engineer named Park So-jin. The Foundation is ready for the memorial garden. Veltar nodded, his compound eyes reflecting genuine emotion. The memorial garden would honor all those who had died during the war, coalition soldiers, council forces, and civilians from every species. Under the old council, only the victors would have been remembered. In the far reaches of the galaxy, Captain Kim Hyo-jin prepared her ship for the most important mission in human history. The Pioneer's Dream was the largest ship ever built, but it wasn't designed for war. It was designed for exploration, carrying representatives from every Union species on a journey that would take them beyond the galaxy itself. Final systems. Check complete, reported her chief engineer, a Rothak named Click Bright, who had once been a slave in the Council's mines. Forerunner drive is operating at optimal capacity. We're ready to make history. Kim looked around her bridge at the crew. That represented everything the Union stood for. Her navigator was Cathara, her science officer was Vorthan, her communications specialist was one of the energy beings called Lux, and her security chief was a former council soldier who had chosen cooperation over conquest. All stations report. Ready, Captain, announced her first officer, Commander Lee Tae-wan. We can depart at your command. Not yet, Kim replied, looking at the holographic display that showed the galaxy they were about to leave behind. We need to send one final message. The message she recorded was broadcast to every world in the Union, carried by the instant communication network that connected civilizations across hundreds of thousands of light years. This is Captain Kim Hyo-jin of the exploration ship Pioneers. Dream, she began. We are about to become the first beings from our galaxy to visit another galaxy in over 1,000,000 years. We go not as conquerors or colonists, but as ambassadors of cooperation. On Earth, President Moon watched the broadcast along with billions of other beings across the galaxy. The little girl who had been born during the war and never known the old council's oppression sat on her father's shoulders, reaching toward the stars. We carry with us the hopes of 300 species who have learned that working together makes us stronger than fighting alone, Kim continued. Whatever we find in other galaxies, we will approach with open minds and open hearts. And we will remember always that our greatest strength is not our technology or our weapons, but our ability to see the worth in every being we meet. The Pioneer's Dream activated its Forerunner drive and vanished in a flash of light that could be seen from halfway across the galaxy. They were gone, but they would return with news of what lay beyond their home among the stars. In the years that followed, the Union continued to grow and change. New species were discovered in unexplored regions of the galaxy, and each one was welcomed with the same message humanity had wished to hear so many years ago. You have a place here. The artificial intelligence beings that humanity had created became full citizens, with rights and responsibilities equal to any biological species. The energy creatures learned to take physical form when they wanted to interact more closely with matter-based beings. The plant-like Verdani helped terraform dead worlds into gardens that could support life. Trade flourished between worlds that had never trusted each other before. Art and music from hundreds of cultures created new forms of beauty that no single species could have imagined. Children grew up learning languages from a dozen different worlds and thinking of the galaxy as one vast community. Dr. Park Soo-jin, now ancient but still sharp, spent her final years teaching at the Interspecies University on Nexus Prime. The same station where humanity had once been rejected was now the center of learning for the entire galaxy. The most important thing to remember, she told her students, a mix of young beings from every corner of the Union, is that civilization is not about being the same. It's about being different together. Her last lecture was about the day humanity was exiled to the Outer Rim and how that rejection had led to the greatest cooperation in galactic history. They tried to lock us away because they were afraid of what we might become, she said, looking out at faces and energy patterns and crystal formations that represented the future of galactic civilization. They were right to be afraid, but not because we would conquer them. She paused, her old eyes twinkling with the same curiosity that had driven her to study alien life all those decades ago. They were afraid because we would show them a better way to live. The message came from the pioneer,